Hello and welcome to an exciting and informative look at your Flickback year. Flickbacks has assembled for you some of the finest newsreel footage from your favorite year and created some vivid memories of what happened when. Sports, movies, fashion, politics, and the theater, Flickbacks has it all. Join us now for a stroll down memory lane and see just what occurred in your favorite year, 1965. So make yourself comfortable and prepare to recall the real pictures of the good old days. Enjoy the flick.
The Palace of the Queen has lived through many historic events, and it's our privilege today to witness one of the most earth-shaking. The audience outside Buckingham may give you an inkling of what's going on. Who's been getting in the oldsters' hair the past few years? Why, the boys who invented hair, the Beatles. Fresh from an audience with the Queen, they hold medals, indicating they have been made members of the most excellent order of the British Empire. The original announcement caused a minor uproar. A couple of MBEs returned their medals, but the raucous foursome accepted the honor quietly. That's more than you can say for the fans who stormed the palace gates. They made the state walls shiver with their moans and cries for the heroes. The Beatles, of course, have proven to be one of Britain's prime exports. They have brought in more foreign exchange than many industries. After all, they are an industry unto themselves, and the Queen saw fit to reward their economic contribution to the nation. The award entitles the Beatles to put the letters MBE after their names. And what could MBE mean but more Beatle encores? Yeah. The Heavenly Twins return to Earth in triumph. Copters from the carrier Wasp pick up Major James McDivitt and Major Edward White after they splash down in the Atlantic 98 historic hours from their blast-off at Cape Kennedy. In 4 days, they completed 62 orbits and traveled almost 1.75 million miles. 2.5 round trips to the moon. Major White's walk, of course, had the world agog. A little more than 2 months after the Russian stroll, the U.S. had closed the space gap. Gemini 4 speeds around the Earth at 17,500 miles an hour. Here is the historic moment as Major White removes his lifeline from the tether bag. The oxygen communications cable is slightly shorter than the 25-foot safety line that leashes him to the capsule. For theater showing, these pictures have been optically processed. Originally made at 6 frames a second to conserve film, they have been slowed to 24 frames a second to show every detail as White moves slowly and deliberately as he planned to do. Remember, there is no friction in space. A sudden move could send the Major tumbling. However, he uses his jet oxygen gun with impunity, moving with daring caution as he speeds across the United States. He was supposed to stay out only 10 minutes or so. He found the sensation so exhilarating that he strolled for 6,000 miles, 20 minutes alone in the cosmos with the Earth as his footstool. This, then, is the new horizon of mankind. Now, this is President Johnson's hour. He becomes President of the United States in his own right. To take the oath is Hubert Horatio Humphrey, who fills an office that has been vacant since President Kennedy's assassination. The oath is administered by Speaker of the House John McCormack, who until this moment was next in line to succeed to the presidency. An embrace for his wife from the new Vice President. Then the solemn moment that marks the continuity of the President's office. Chief Justice Warren administers the oath as Mrs. Johnson establishes an historical precedent. For the first time, a president's wife holds the Bible, a gift from his mother, as Mr. Johnson is sworn in.
Will to the best of your ability.
And will to the best of my ability.
Preserve, protect, and defend.
Preserve, protect, and defend.
The Constitution of the United States.
The Constitution of the United States.
So help you God.
So help me God.
Winston Churchill was ever in the van of those men who sought a better world, a world of freedom and human dignity where tyranny and oppression did not exist. This man of the century was born at Blenheim Castle, and the first lusty cries of the future statesman were heard here. As befitting a descendant of the Duke of Marlborough, he was to be a soldier, but instead became a correspondent in the Boer War. Captured, he escaped and always regretted the small price put on his head. Elected to Parliament in 1900, he became First Lord of the Admiralty in World War I. A great figure had stepped on the world stage. As First Lord, he revitalized the British fleet, and in his dual capacity as Minister of Munitions, he helped develop the tank. He was in and out of office between the two world wars, but never out of the hearts of his countrymen. He received many honorary degrees, topping off dignified affairs by roughhousing with students. Then came the shame of Hitler. A great voice was heard again.
And with the British Empire around us, we shall fight on, unconquerable, until the curse of Hitler is lifted from the brows of men. We are sure that in the end, all will be well.
The British stood fast behind their leader. They took every horror Hitler's Luftwaffe could inflict and raised bloody fingers in V for Victory salutes. He crossed the ocean many times to confer with President Franklin Roosevelt, and the two leaders inspired free men to renewed efforts against the forces of evil. The Four Freedoms became a charter of democracy and spirit. When the Nazis under Rommel were driven from North Africa, Churchill was on the scene with words of inspiration and encouragement for the troops, with new promises of a victory complete and total. The beachheads in Normandy were no sooner secured than the Prime Minister followed the troops. A tactician of no mean ability, he conferred with Supreme Commander Eisenhower in the field. As the Allied armies fanned out over Europe, he joined with an armored unit to cross the Rhine. Then victory. When Paris was liberated, the architect of victory rode in triumph up the Champs-Élysées. To a man with Churchill's sense of history, this was his finest hour. Then unconditional surrender of the Germans, and he stood proudly beside his king, truly a man of destiny. He was Prime Minister again when he celebrated his 80th birthday with his beloved Clementine. Now Sir Winston, a Nobel Prize winner, he was host to Queen Elizabeth at number 10 Downing Street before relinquishing his seat in Parliament and retiring to his home at Hyde Park Gate. He was confined unwillingly to Middlesex Hospital when he was 87. He looked upon the concern for his broken hip as stuff and nonsense. He was the personification of John Bull himself. In his sunset years, Sir Winston was confined to his home, but through his writings and his many immortal phrases, the name Churchill continues to ring down the corridors of time. We, here and now, were privileged to know greatness.
Since 1954, every American president has offered support to the people of South Vietnam. We have helped to build, and we have helped to defend. Thus, over many years, we have made a national pledge to help South Vietnam defend its independence. And I intend to keep that promise.
Angels of mercy to wounded soldiers in the Vietnam War are the helicopters, flying ambulances that can easily penetrate the jungle and drop down to pick up the wounded who might otherwise die. Here in a typical mission, the chopper is guided to the scene by radio. The medics don't hesitate to run a gauntlet of Viet Cong sniper fire. In actions like this, they may be surrounded on all sides by the rebels. This action took place near Quin Hom, where government troops mounted a three-pronged attack to capture Route 19 that snakes across South Vietnam. They successfully cleared the road of rebels and ended a threat to cut the country in half. The fighting is over for these wounded, but thanks to the modern miracle of the helicopter, they will soon be able to rejoin their units. The heavy bombing raids that have been initiated on North Vietnam have done little to change the character of this strange war. South Vietnam remains pockmarked with centers of Viet Cong action like this. It's a war of search and shoot, seek and kill. To the Vietnamese and their American comrades, it remains mostly a war of frustration, but a war that would be far worse without the aid of the workhorse copters. They have proved their worth more than any other weapon in South Vietnam. Selma sprang overnight from an obscure southern town to the front pages of world newspapers. This church was headquarters in the Negro drive for the right to vote, and it was here that Martin Luther King came to lend his support to the campaign. He pointed out that from Selma's 14,000 Negroes, only a few more than 300 had been registered at the polls. When one group set out to march to the Capitol at Montgomery, the procession was broken up violently by state troopers and sheriff's deputies. Then Dr. King led another contingent through the town. This time, there is no violence. The 1,000 Negroes and 400 white ministers and civil rights workers reach the end of the bridge where the cordon of troopers stand. They are ordered to turn back. Dr. King confers with the police as the marchers hold their ground. He requests that they be allowed to pray. There are a few minutes of mounting tension. The request to pray is granted, and they kneel in the streets. Informants say that Dr. King turned his marchers at the behest of the White House, an arrangement that had been made in advance to avoid a confrontation that could only end in bloodshed. 6 days of rioting in a Negro section of Los Angeles left behind scenes reminiscent of war-torn cities. More than 100 square blocks were decimated by fire and looters, and few buildings were left intact. Firemen were harassed by snipers and brick-throwing hoodlums as they attempted to control the fires, many of which were left to burn themselves out. As the National Guard moved in to restore comparative calm, the losses by fire alone were put at $200 million. No attempt has yet been made to estimate the losses suffered at the hands of the looters who stole everything from liquor to playpens. Firemen were later issued flak suits of bulletproof mesh to protect them from snipers who continued to shoot from rooftops. Nearly 3,000 were arrested, and authorities had to open abandoned jails to house those netted by the police. It took the appearance of 14,000 troops to bring an end to what both Negro and white leaders called insurrection by hoodlums. Civil rights leaders were quick to deplore the unbridled lawlessness, and Martin Luther King vowed to do all in his power to prevent a recurrence in Los Angeles or anywhere. Down to the wire in the World Series. The Minnesota Twins are in their home park facing the Los Angeles Dodgers in the 7th and deciding game. Facing two, Sandy Koufax, pitching with only 2 days rest and no real curve today, but still the greatest. Here, Zola Vesales goes out swinging. Strikeout victim number 2, Earl Batty. Koufax gets the support he needs in the 4th inning. Lou Johnson's drive hits the screen on the left field foul pole for a home run. Johnson happily applauds himself en route home, a familiar gesture for this 32-year-old veteran who at last plays a starring role in baseball's classic. Ron Fairley next up doubles into the right field corner. It's hit number 11 of the series for Fairley.
Wes Parker swings away just when Minnesota was expecting the sacrifice. Fairley races home with the second Dodger run. The Twins threaten in the fifth. Tying runs are on. One out. Gonzalez the batter. His hard smash inside the third base line is backhanded by Jim Gilliam, who gets the force out. The brilliant save stuns the home crowd. Joe Nosek then grounds into another force out. The score remains 2-0 Dodgers. Bottom of the ninth, one out. Harmon Killebrew singles. Koufax had retired 12 straight until this hit, only the third of the game for Minnesota. Koufax has gone to his fastball. Earl Batty strikes out. With two down, the batter is Bob Allison. Strikeout number 10. Koufax and the Dodgers take the World Series. The Twins never got a man to third base against the remarkable left-hander. Los Angeles takes home its second World Championship in the last 3 years.
Back on the East Coast at New York's Madison Square Garden, there are records and more records. In the high jump, Russia's Valery Brummel, the world champ, is suffering a sore knee. He's hard-pressed by his high-jumping rivals all evening. But when the chips are down, he easily clears 7 feet 3 inches. Then the crowd sees Brummel go after the world's record, 7'4½". He gives it a good try, but can't quite make it. No record, but Brummel is still top man among high jumpers. The Boston Celtics get off to a bouncy start as they get the opening jump off, and Sam Jones is down the court with a taste of things to come. Leading the Los Angeles Lakers 3-1 in the playoff. The Celtics need just this game for their 7th straight title. And again, Sam Jones shows they are not fooling around. The Lakers managed to stay within striking distance for the first quarter. That other Jones boy, Casey, has larceny in his heart as he steals the ball and dribbles down for a layup shot. Then the Lakers' Walt Hazzard does a little shoplifting himself as the Coast Quintet does battle right to the end. Here's some Boston razzle-dazzle. Keep your eye on Tom Sanders, number 16. Boston breaks loose in the last period, scoring 42 points, a new record. This is Willie Knoll's sterling contribution. Never has a team in any sport won 7 consecutive titles. The Celtics make record book history tonight. With the final whistle, Sam Jones has the ball, and he lets it go with a whoop. The Boston Celtics and their coach, Red Auerbach, have given Bostonians something to talk about. Along with baked beans, basketball is their dish. Here are the hairstyles to go with the new Paris fashions. At least that's what they tell us. The hairdos are bejeweled, belacquered, and at times belabored. This coolie clip is the unkindest cut of all. This upsweep is frozen in place once it's set. And if you don't like this one, why not put out feelers and see how hubby would like you in this? All in all, you must say that these styles are little gems. When it snows in Japan, they don't just sit around a hot hibachi and wait for spring, they do something about it. At Sapporo in northern Japan, they hold a snow festival after local sculptors have their innings. The city park is covered with icy works of art that draw spectators from all over the nation. It's your one chance to see the great Buddha carved from ice. They first pile the snow as high as possible, coat it with a mixture of salt and water, and then go to work. The results call for banzais.